Bonjour, Kinamagene Ireland Indigenicas, coming live with this production of Social Studies Television. Today's episode, Chapter 4, Section 1, Geography of Colonial America. We'll begin by looking at exactly where is colonial America, because that's one of the big elements of geography. And you can see that we're located here in Michigan, and we have to go east towards the Atlantic Ocean, and it'll run from Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Virginia, because West Virginia didn't exist. It was part of Virginia at that time, North and South Carolina, and Georgia. If I zoom in, some of the features you see along here, the bumps, those are the Appalachian Mountains. And while by no means the equivalent of the Rockies, they are still tall enough to make your ears pop as you travel through them. You'll find a lot of rivers, such as the Hudson over here. A series of rivers here, including the Potomac, the Rappahannock, the James River, where Jamestown is. And you find a lot of good spots for ports along this area too. A lot of coastal plains, like if you started your day now we're north of Richmond, you'll find some hills, but by and large, nothing really significant. By the time you drive an hour north, you're going up and down. And then if you go this way, it's going to be the same way. If you go over here into the foothills, it's going to be the same way as well. The presence of the Appalachian Mountains are going to play a big role in where people settled initially. The other map I'd like to show you is what we call a political map. A political map simply has the location of man-made things like states or provinces, even townships on a smaller map. So that's the difference. Political, physical. You can see as you get over here, it's a lot different looking. So it's not just the pretty colors. So we saw the political and physical map. Terrain is often the elevation or easiness to travel, like the coastal plains would be a terrain, mountains are a terrain, swamps are a terrain. Surveyor is someone who was paid by a government to go out and mark where boundaries were. So we recently learned that the 13 colonies did not form overnight. Instead, they started out as small settlements that expanded into colonies. In this chapter, you'll see exactly how these colonies developed into the states they are today. 1, how do the colonies compare physically? Climate, geography, etc. 2, what is something different about each region? 3, what is something the regions had in common? 4, what were the 3 main places colonists lived? And what was a reason to live in each? And when we say main places, we're definitely talking about the 3 regions: New England, middle colonies, southern colonies. Have you ever wondered why the original colonies of the United States are shaped like they are? Their borders are oddly shaped and don't seem to make a lot of sense. Wouldn't it have been easier to make the borders square and give everyone the same size colony? To answer those questions, we first have to look at the landforms in and around the 13 original colonies. Take a look at the physical map of the United States, then take a look at the political map of the 13 original colonies on the next page. What, if anything, do you see that would force the colonies to take a certain shape? So let's look again at our political map, and we're focused in over here. And remember that these two were together as one in Virginia. I see a straight line here. See another straight line there. And some straight lines-ish over here. When we get to the eastern lines, there's something in the way that would make this difficult to be a straight line. a small body of water known as the Atlantic Ocean. About the same size as a pond, I guess. But no state was going to go and build land. So you have to use the natural landforms. Here between uh, these parts of Maryland, Chesapeake Bay, that runs along Virginia, Maryland, and separates Virginia from Delaware. It's there. It's a body of water you're not just going to fill in, much too large, nor would you really want to, because water is a very useful thing. The eastern edge of our country has some very important landforms. These landforms influence the way the colonies took their shape. For example, look at Virginia on the colonies map, and then look at the same area on the physical map. The area is defined by three major landforms: a mountain chain, two rivers, and the Atlantic Ocean. And we showed you that at the beginning of this section. In this box of questions, it does ask, what if we didn't have all of these landforms? Would we have one big colony or even more small colonies? And while likely we would have a few colonies, they would have stretched further in. We know that Virginia and all of these original colonies claimed land far to the west. Roll of water. And it asks to come up with a list of at least 10 things for which the colonists would have needed water. I think that's a pretty easy idea because it's probably similar to the 10 things you need for water, and definitely similar to the 10 things that the Anishinaabe would have needed water for. If you were moving to a new town, what would be the first thing you would hope to see? At the time of the colonists, one thing they really wanted to find was a water source, specifically a fresh water source. Why would the colonists have cared so much about fresh water? I don't know. Have you been thirsty today? Might be a good starting spot for your list. Water was a source of transportation, business, nutrients, food, and life for the colonists. Since water was so important, many colonies settled along water routes, primarily rivers. Think back to political and physical maps you looked at the beginning of the section. Every colony has some sort of water source going through it. Some even have boundaries formed by them. Another big landform that helped shape the colonies is the Appalachian mountain chain. The original 13 colonies did not go past the mountain chain. Why do you think the original colonists would have stopped at the Appalachian Mountains? Have you tried walking over them? They're still pretty tall. You either have to find a bunch of mountain valleys or climb over it and summit the mountain. Neither of which would make your horse and buggy very happy if you were lucky. Definitely would not make your back happy if you're carrying everything. Imagine this. You have been on a cramped and smelly boat for several months. You land in a new area that few people have ever been to. You are seasick, hungry, and a little crabby. You get on the shore and your leader says you have to build a house now. Fast forward, it has been a few months now, but you have worked really hard the whole time you have been in America. You had to build a home, create farmland, figure out the new terrain, and survive a long winter. Now that winter is over, your leader says it is time to investigate the new country a little further. You walked for several days and you came upon a large mountain chain. Would you really have the energy to go through the mountains? Or would you have just want to stop there, especially since you have no idea what's on the other side? Like you, the colonists did not take time to explore the mountains or what was on the other side. Well, most didn't. Instead, they used the mountains as a border for some of the colonies. Look at the pictures of the Appalachian Mountains on the previous page. Can you see what it would have been difficult to get through the mountain chain? And speaking as someone who just drove through this yesterday, it's not like there's one mountain and then you're on the other side. These mountains stretch from here all the way over to here. Even driving, that is going around this way, that's a 4-hour drive on modern roads. That would have been taken weeks to make that trip if you were walking, especially the up and down aspect. Marking out the land. The job of marking out the colonies was not an easy one. A group of people called surveyors had the job of marking out borders based on the king's orders. The original surveyors of the colonies had their work cut out for them. The king would send a drawing of what the colony should look like, but it was up to the surveyors to establish those boundaries. At the time, most of the area was covered in forest and untamed wilderness. These surveyors would follow the king's line and using some basic tools like a compass and chain, they would mark out the new borders. Remember, the tools they had were not very good. There were no places to fly overhead, and there were no trains or cars to get in places quickly. And there definitely weren't cell phones to share information quickly. Their tools were very basic. In fact, the chains that measured America were only 33 feet long. So the colonies were measured 33 feet at a time. You want a reference point, a first down in an NFL football game is 30 feet for 10 yards. Think of marking the entire boundary of a state first down by first down. An activity you're welcome to try. And instead of using a playground in the middle of a pandemic, you could use anything. So we'll say an area. So get a piece of yarn measuring 33 feet, and you can measure that using a tape measure or just go back and forth with a ruler. Find a few friends, or at least one, and try to work your way around your playground or area. Keep track of a few things while you work. How many times have you had to reset your string, which is every 33 feet? How long does it take you to complete the activity? And decide what the perimeter of the area you're measuring is based on your measurements. So if you're measuring your driveway, if you had to reset your chain 10 times, the perimeter or distance around would be 330 feet. So I want you to try that in any old spot in your yard if you have string accessible. If you do this assignment, take a picture or do some kind of comment on this post because I'm curious of what you measured and how big it was. At this point, you should now return to your Google Classroom and complete the assignment. Bumblebee.